It's funny how betrayal doesn't just cut you, it eats away at you. It warps your vision of the world and of people you love, but also, strangely, of yourself. My name is Emily Carter, and what I'm sharing with you is not just a story, it's the collapse of my life. When my father died, I believed that this was the worst experience I would endure. I was so wrong. The true sting arrived when those whom I trusted most, those who should have been protecting me, cleaned me out. But they underestimated me. They did not know what I could do when up against the wall. This is the story of how I took it all back and made them regret ever crossing me. And let me tell you, you'll want to know every single twist in this tale. I was there at the window of my tiny apartment in Queens, New York, looking down on the street outside. The cacophony of traffic paled to a low murmur as I grappled with the recollections that enveloped me like a thick fog. I am Emily Carter, and I was trying to still get over the death of my father. He had died only a month before in a sterile hospital room, the beeping machines being turned off as I held his hand. I had figured losing him would be the worst thing I ever went through. I had no idea that was only the start of my own personal hell. It was tough growing up in a broken home. My mom had died when I was very young, and I only recalled vague memories of her familiar grin and soft hand. My father had been the one who held everything together, raising me and my two older siblings, Jake and Lauren, with love and determination. But I was lonelier than ever after his death. The fact that he was not here was heavy in the air, and everything around me felt like it lost color. The golden child was always my older brother, Jake. He was charismatic and charming, and he knew how to get what he wanted. Lauren, the middle sister, was the responsible one, always trying to keep the peace. Yet she had a sharp tongue that could cut a swath of tension through a room. I was always the silent one, the one in the corner hoping to prevent the family from falling apart at the seams. But after our father died, the fragile cords that stitched us together began to break. The day of the funeral felt like a blur. We clustered about the grave, shoulders drawn up against the chill of autumn air. Our thoughts turned inward. And while the casket was lowered into the ground, I felt a piece of me buried with it. I looked at Jake and Lauren, who seemed sad, but also something else. Something I couldn't quite pin down. I discounted it. They must be as shattered as me. We met at my father's house in the days that followed to organize his things. It was excruciating, and there were memories that hurt to remember. Photographs, letters, and trinkets were spread on the dining room table, souvenirs of a life well lived but now eclipsed by grief. Amid the tumult came the bombshell that my father had a $500,000 life insurance policy with yours truly as the sole beneficiary. I was floored when I first heard the news. I thought my dad would end up splitting his assets among his children since our family was so close-knit. But when the gravity of the situation hit, I felt the mood loosen. Jake and Lauren went white, and a sudden, silent tension filled the space. I attempted to shake it off, saying to myself they are just in mourning. Who could think about money at a time like this? But as I started the process to collect the payment, I saw that my siblings were not just mourning. They were scheming. Face, they pretend they care. They offer well-meaning empty sympathy and tell me they'll be there for me during my sorry time. But behind it was a dark secret. I caught little fragments of conversations, whispers of what their real feelings were. Entitlement. They felt entitled to my father's money, that I shouldn't be the only one benefiting from his hard work. I heard them arguing in the kitchen one night while I was sitting on the couch, looking through their old photo albums. They spoke in whispers, but I was able to catch words like, "She doesn't deserve it," and "We need to get what's ours." Listening, I felt my heart race, betrayal searing through me more violently than any blade. How could they believe this? Despite everything our father had done for us, they were willing to go against me in exchange for money? The nerves were getting worse every day, and I felt more and more alone, somehow the only one who truly grieved our father. The Jake and Lauren masquerade of support slipped away, and their bigotry was exposed. I felt a rush of betrayal and a burning fear that greed would rob me of my brothers. I had wanted to believe we were able to come together, to honor our father and his memory, but the truth was becoming increasingly apparent. The ties of our family were unraveling, and there I was, stuck in the middle. As I looked out of that window, as the world passed me by, I swore to myself. I wasn't going to let them seize what was rightly mine. I wouldn't be their victim. I was possibly the youngest, but I could push back. It was time to take back my life, my future, and the inheritance my father had bestowed upon me. Unbeknownst to me, it was only the start of a war that would turn everything upside down. The day I collected my father's life insurance payment at the bank was one of those life-changing days. I'd lain awake nights, dreaming of ways I might use the money. Maybe a little apartment of my own. Perhaps another semester of college so I could finally earn a degree. Or possibly a trip to Italy to see the beauty my father had spoken of. But when I walked into the bank, holding the sheaf of paperwork in the dusty center directly across from my chest, a sour, belly-white worry draped over me. I felt as if the walls were literally closing in on me. Something didn't seem quite right as I was walking up to the teller. There were a few rote questions and a pause before the teller's face changed. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter, but there seems to be a problem with the account," she said with a clear voice, though her eyes reflected a glimmer of worry. "What do you mean, an issue?" I asked, my heart racing. "I'm here to receive the payout on my father's life insurance." With those words, she rapped at her keyboard with fervor, her fingers skimming across the keys. "The money's gone already," she said, looking up at me. "There is a note stating that the withdrawal was made in your name." I heard a gasp catch in my breath. "What do you mean? That's impossible." "I didn't withdraw anything." "I'm sorry, Miss Carter. The signature was consented to in the course of the transaction." I felt the rush of panic through me as I struggled to make sense of things. I felt like I was in a bad dream and couldn't wake up. "Can I see the signature?" I cried out, my voice shaky. The teller paused before taking a paper off her desktop. I looked at the signature and my heart dropped. It was a clumsy copy. Somebody had forged my name. Poisonous anger and betrayal ran through me. I knew right away who it had to be. When I left the bank, I hit the road and I was flying down there. How could Jake and Lauren have pulled it off? They were my brothers and sisters, the people I was supposed to trust the most. I thought of all the times we'd spent together, the birthday parties, the family dinners, and the vacations we took together. How could they do this to me? When I got home, I found them on the couch laughing out loud in the flat. I stood there in the entryway for a few seconds, paralyzed, while they exchanged teasing glances and inside jokes. It felt surreal, watching them in their blitheness while I felt my world was shattering. "Hey, Em, you're back," Jake phoned, smiling broadly and disarming. "Did you get the money?" I inhaled deeply and mentally squeezed out every ounce of control I had. "Yeah, about that," I said, my voice steady but the storm of uncertainty raging inside of me. "It appears there's been a glitch. Somebody took the money out having not asked me." Their faces could change from smiling to scowling in a second. "What do you mean, someone took it?" Lauren inquired, her forehead lined with concern. "I mean, someone impersonated my signature and emptied the account," I replied, my heart quickening as I squinted at them accusatorially. "And I think I know who it was." Jake's face turned grim, while Lauren looked away, a shadow of guilt moving across her eyes. "That's ridiculous, Em. Why would we do that?" Jake shot back, accusing Shmuel of committing an act of disbelief. "'Cause you think you deserve it," I erupted, unleashed from the dam of my passions. "You're both trying to get that money, and you all thought I wouldn't catch you." "Relax," Lauren said, irritation underneath her voice. "You're being dramatic. We're family. We would never do that to you." "Family?" I gave a bitter chuckle that rang through the taut stillness. "You've been scheming right from when Dad died, and now you've stolen from me. What do you call that?" "Hey, look," Jake said, trying to smooth things over. We could all use that." "Seriously, you won't use it all anyway. You're still in that tiny apartment, and you don't know how to handle that kind of money." I put my hand over my face. I could feel my face burning crimson hot. Damn it, you think I'm too fucking dumb or something to be able to handle it? You think I'm undeserving of what Dad left for me? Their countenances changed from assumed innocence to something of more foreboding. I could catch the sparkle in their eyes, the defensiveness dissolving. Now, Emily, calm down. Lauren's voice was tainted with panic. We're here to help you. Dad would have wanted us to share. Help me? I echoed incredulously. By stealing from me? So you two think you can help yourselves to what's mine and make it sound as if you're doing me a favor? The argument grew heated, words cutting through the air like daggers. They told me it was for the best. It's what Dad would have wanted us to share. Yet when I looked into their eyes, all I saw was greed. The betrayal was so much deeper than I would ever have fathomed. Both fear and anger were evident on my brother-in-law's face. No discussion ever transpired. The only words spoken were yelling, and many and varied names were called. As the dust settled on that discussion, it became apparent that this wasn't just about money. A cold finality crept through me. That was the moment I made my decision. I could stay there and let them stomp all over me, or I could push back against the betrayal that left my world in pieces. Something in me changed at that instant. I could not be the quiet, passive sister anymore. I was done being the victim. So, with every last drop of stubbornness, I swore to take back what was mine by rights. I would make a lesson, not just for them, but for myself, out of this betrayal. The conflict had only started, and I was prepared to fight. The days after the confrontation were filled with a fog of betrayal and anger. I was coiled worse than a spring, about to pop at any second. After that blow-up with Jake and Lauren, I knew something needed to be done. I wasn't going to let them go on taking what my father left me. I needed a plan, one that not only would help me get the money back, but also teach my siblings a lesson they'd never forget. I researched everything I could, every waking minute. I then began collecting data about my siblings. I had come to know them enough to recognize their weaknesses. Jake was charismatic and charming, good at making people like him. But underneath all that, he had a record of financial irresponsibility. He was utterly broke from a failed business and in dire need of fast cash. What's more, Lauren was the sensible one in her family, but she was constantly overextending herself in her quest to keep up appearances. She had expensive tastes that belied her modest income. Sitting at my small kitchen table with my laptop open in front of me, articles and legal information in multiple tabs, I started to hatch a plan. I had to beat them at their own game, to play it better than they themselves could. Dad's life insurance payout was red flagged after the unauthorized withdrawal, so the insurance company had to be certain that I was still a legitimate beneficiary before they would release any funds. I thought it was time to visit a lawyer, to follow someone through the legal labyrinth. Fortunately, my father had a friend who practiced law and offered to represent me. I sent a meeting request, and when I marched into his office, I had a sense of resolve. He listened attentively while I told the story of what had occurred after my father had died, including the forgery of the will and the treachery of my brothers and sisters. You need to make sure ASAP that you're the sole beneficiary, he told Emily as he leaned back in his chair. We will write a letter to the insurance company to explain what's going on. They'll realize that the funds were accessed without permission and be more willing to cooperate with you to recover your payout. The lawyer's words were a comfort to me, but I knew I couldn't just wait for the insurance company to take action. I had to change the story. I'd play the nice sister with a lull Jake and Lauren back to sleep while I plotted in the back. I contacted them, telling them that we should sit down and talk about the life insurance money. I think this is something we should discuss as a family, I replied, trying to keep my voice casual and light. I just want to figure out how we can all profit from Dad's hard work. Jake and Lauren looked at one another, and their disbelief shone through their hesitation to use the funds. They accepted to meet him, and I could feel their anticipation, as they hoped they could sweet-talk me into sharing the proceeds. Unbeknownst to them, I had the upper hand. At our meeting, I played dumb, pretending as a naive little sister that I didn't have all the legal aspects of this down pat and needed their advice. Maybe we should set up a joint account and manage the money together, I suggested, in my most kept voice sweet. That's how we all decide the best way to spend the money. Jake's eyes glistened with lust, and practical, reliable Lauren gave a nod of assent. That's a great idea, Em. We can invest it and grow it, she said, imagining the possibilities before the money was even her own. As they were scheming how to spend the spoils, I made off and stole a second in which to see my lawyer. And I had to demonstrate my intentions without giving away my scheme. We drew up an investment account that I would manage, and that would be accessible only with my signature. Seeing the puzzle come together and feeling like part of a solution was all empowering. I was done being the victim. I was owning my future. I'd give them their trust, but I would also lead them on. They would regret the betrayal they had done to me, and I would make sure that I stamped that lesson into their memory forever. Deep inside my core, I still kept a flame ignited that I could somehow return us to the family that we were. But as the days turned into weeks and my plan began to materialize, I knew the road to getting what I wanted would be sprinkled in their remorse. I was prepared to battle for my father's honor, and I was prepared to do whatever it took to see that justice was served. The plan was set in motion. Admittedly, I was nervous as I walked to meet Jake and Lauren A. for the first time in 4 years. This time would be different. I had led them in the direction of every detail to construct in exactly that way, so that I was still in control, and so that they had enough rope to hang themselves. We decided to have coffee at a local cafe in the area where we'd enjoyed many a hot chocolate and pastries in the past. I picked a smallish table in a far corner, hoping the aura might relax us all. Since I got there so early, I sat sipping my latte, practicing my lines in my head. I had to act credible, to bring them down really hidden in my web. When they finally got here, I greeted them with a smile that seemed like a mask. Hey guys, thanks for coming. I've been thinking so much about how we can be smart with Dad's life insurance money, I said, trying to sound upbeat. Jake sat back in his chair, not quite squinting his eyes. What are you thinking, Em? He inquired, the inflection, if not the tone, casual. I sat a folder on the table of papers I'd prepared with the help of my attorney. I was thinking maybe we could start a joint investment account. It would enable us to pool the money and to make intelligent decisions together. We'd better honor Dad's memory, right? He is happy, I added, stressing the last bit to somehow pull on their heartstrings. Lauren nodded, her gaze still skimming over the papers. That sounds reasonable. What do we need to do? I outlined the process, my voice even and my body language subdued. We'll have to sign some documents to open the account. Once that's in place, let's figure out how to spend these dollars. I think it's important that we all really understand this all together. I could tell that Jake's mind was racing, that his competitive drive had been stoked as I talked. He had been the one who took chances, who ran after fast profits. My heartbeat accelerated when I felt he thought it might be useful to him. Yeah, we need to put our money in something that will really grow. Maybe tech stocks or a whole startup, he said, his enthusiasm practically leaping through the phone. Exactly, I responded, resisting the urge to roll my eyes. But all of us deserve to have a say in what we invest in, so that we don't feel jealous and cheated and cut out. After some negotiation, they accepted my offer, and I saw them both sign the papers I had drafted. Every signature was a triumph and brought me closer to taking back my rightful share. I suppressed a smile, for they believed they were getting the drop on me, when in truth I was the chattler of the breeze. Now that the paperwork was finished, I lounged back in my chair and dropped my posture. By the way, guys, I think we should also form an action plan in the event that things don't go according to plan. You know, in case the market turns or something. Jake, turn around, Sage said, waving at him. Em, you worry too much. We'll make smart choices. We're all in this together, no? Absolutely, I said, my voice masking my enthusiasm. But I would prefer us to be safe. Dad would want us to be careful with the money, after all. Unbeknown to them, my lawyer had already explained to me about a clause in the account that would allow me to continue to maintain control of the funds. Under the terms of the agreement, any withdrawal would be subject to my consent, and I could withdraw access to the account at any time. I had them wrapped in a net of their own avarice, and it was a net that would soon close around them. Weeks went by, and I pretended that everything was fine, that we were still friends as we met, and would trade investment strategy ideas. Jake and Lauren wanted to spitball, thrilled by the idea of making money. I was totally convincing as I sat there nodding my head and pretending to take notes while they blabbed on. And the more involved they were, the more I saw their weaknesses and fragilities. Then one night, while my friends assembled in my apartment to discuss our investment strategy, I sensed the tension between the two of them. Both were eager to make decisions, but they were pulling in different directions. Jake wanted to put his money into a risky tech startup. Lauren kept suggesting more conservative investments. "I say we just take a vote, guys," I innocently said, because at the end of the day, it's about ensuring that everybody feels heard. Right? They accepted, and as we crowded around my small dining table, I was thrilled. The time had come for me to come clean. "All right, shall we take a vote on the first investment? We can each propose our choice, and then we can decide together." Even as they pitched their ideas, I felt their passion and ambition, but I could also feel the stress below the surface. I let them play, and then tried to play something better. I've been thinking, what if we invest in a manner that benefits all of us instead of one or two of us? Perhaps the majority of the money should be put into a trust that they can't touch without mutual consent. A sense of apprehension filled the room. Jake's eyes narrowed, and I could see the wheels turning. "What exactly do you mean by mutual agreement? We must move quickly if we are going to seize these opportunities." "Nothing. That's what I am. A nothing." And I kept cool. I kept my cool, and I said, "Exactly." But by putting it in a trust, we protected ourselves from making irrational decisions. It's a question of being clever, not just impulsive. And it's going to take a little time for us to weigh our options without worrying about losing everything. Lauren glanced at Jake uncertainly. "What if we will need the money urgently? What if there's an opportunity we don't want to miss?" I grinned to myself that I now had them right where I wanted them. That's the beauty of the trust. It's what lets us decide together. It's about teamwork, right? Tension was thick in the air with both glancing around, obviously feeling the effect of the environment. "At last," Jake said gravely in a sinister tone, "you're playing games, Emily. You're trying to deny us what is ours. This was supposed to be a partnership." "No, Jake," I said, my voice in low, tight coils. "This was not about partnership. This was never anything more than taking back what is rightfully mine. I will not allow you to take that which my father left me." He realized it, and I saw the anger in his eyes turn to pleading. Lauren's face went ashy, and I saw the panic in her eyes. They had misjudged me, assuming that I was the naive little sister who would do as they wished. But now I was on top. "I'll give you the final shot you've got," I said evenly. "You can accept this deal and move on as a team, or I'll drop you both." "You'll get nothing. Consider wisely for your next." I sat back in my chair and felt a surge of victory. I had taken advantage of their betrayal, and now they were rushed to figure something out to hold their reins. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't fighting for the money. I was fighting for my dignity, for a sense of self-worth. And I wasn't going to take a step back. And then I realized that war is no longer about the money. It was about power and trust and what I was willing to do to take back my father's legacy. I was prepared to fight whatever it was, and I wasn't going to stop until I beat it. The air was thick with it as I sat across my small dining table from Jake and Lauren. So obsessed with their own appetite and need for more, they'd been blind to the trap I'd set for them. My heart pounded in my chest as I was about to make the reveal, and I could feel that this was going to be the scene that would either mend or further shatter our fragmented family. "Okay, let's just go through it. What we've decided." I was speaking in a voice steady in spite of the tornado of emotions roiling inside me. I was trying to stay in charge and keep them guessing. They needed to feel their decisions. "First of all, we have determined that Dad's life insurance money is to be invested for mutual gain." I went on watching their faces. We have talked about needing our own trust as protection, and I think that is a smart move. Jake leaned in, looking annoyed. Emily, we have discussed this already. We need to act quickly. Why have we got the money sitting there in trust when there's money to be made at this present time? Because, Jake, I said, getting a little louder, it's about making an informed decision, not a reckless decision. We've all witnessed how fast money can vanish when our friends start making rent decisions on the fly. I give that a moment to sink in, and see their expressions go from a questioning to the dawning of understanding. Lauren folded her arms in defense. You're just afraid we're going to decide something you don't want. You want to dictate everything. No, Lauren, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I'm just trying to fight for what is rightfully mine. What you two did was not only illegal, but it was a fucking betrayal of the trust our dad put in us as his goddamn children. The chamber went quiet, its atmosphere heavy with tension. This moment had been some time in the coming, and I couldn't wait. You both are under the impression that I was an easy mark, and all I would do is lie down on my side and let you take what my father left for me, I said with a steady voice. But I'm not that naive little sister anymore. I've made it so you can't even get to the money without my approval. Jake's face whitened, and I knew he was coming to the same recognition. What are you talking about? He asked, not quite able to hide his panic. You can't do that. Oh, but I can, I said, and I was all of a sudden very powerful. I met with a lawyer, and we structured the account with a provision that if there were withdrawals, they would be at my sole discretion. You can't access the money. Not without my signature, either of you. Not a dime. Their faces turned from shock to rage. You're a liar, Jake spat, voice rising. You guys think you can just cut us off? You're our sister. I'm your sister, yes, I fired back, standing my ground. But I'm also a casualty of your betrayal. You both wouldn't have hesitated to take what was mine. You didn't expect me to respond, did you? Lauren glanced between us, looking for a way to rescue the moment, and we call ourselves professional. Emily, listen. We're family. We can work this out. We just have to come together and make better choices, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. Family? I repeated, the word lingering bitterly in the air. You both made your bed when the two of you betrayed my trust and signed my name. You can't play the family card now that the tables are turned. Jake's temper flared, and he slapped his hands on the table. You're so smart, aren't you? Just because you have a lawyer taking your case doesn't mean that you're going to win this. We'll find a way to claim what is ours. I let myself take a deep breath, bracing myself as the emotions began to rise. You're welcome to try. But you see, I'm no longer the little girl you once bullied. I will fight even more, and I will avail myself of every means to protect what my father left me. The lowness and duration of the silence were deafening. I saw their minds spinning, struggling to come to terms with the fact of it. They'd miscalculated on me, equating my silence with weakness. But I was tougher than they knew, and I was not going to give in. Okay, here's the deal, I said forcefully. You can either take that I'm in control now and you can work with me to invest the money wisely, or you can decide not to, Katzenberg said. But understand this. If you decide to fight me, I will never bend and I will never break, no matter how long it takes to beat you. You're not only going to lose access to the funds, but you're going to be held accountable for it. He shot me a furious look, and I could practically feel it coming off him. You're going to regret this, Emily. So you think you can bully because you guys have a lawyer. We're still blood, and blood counts. Blood is important, I repeated. But trust is important too. You have shattered that trust, and I will not permit you to use it anymore. As my words took effect, I could see them growing less sure of themselves. Their anger had waned, replaced by uncertainty. And now they find themselves on a receiving end of their bad decision. They had underestimated my zeal. Now be wise, or think hard about the consequences, I said, even my tone. You can come with me and help me honor our father's legacy, or you can continue down this road of destruction. The choice is yours. The atmosphere in the room was changed. For the first time, I saw a look of fear in their eyes. They learnt that I wasn't going to be a victim. I was a force to be reckoned with. They had driven me to my breaking point, and now I was ready to take back what was mine, if it took every last piece of me to do so. I sat back in my chair, feeling like I'd taken back some power. This was the time for me, my game changer. I'd made their betrayal my strength and prepared to deal with what came next. A war for my father's legacy was underway, and I was going to see it through to the end. My days after tangling with Jake and Lauren went by in a haze. The heady rush of confrontation was waning, and self-doubt was closing in around me. I had made a bold move, and I knew my siblings wouldn't let this go. They were boxed in, and when people are backed into a corner, sometimes they lash out in unpredictable ways. Over the next couple of days, I planned, thinking about how not only could I protect my claim on the life insurance money, but I could also come out of this ordeal a stronger person. I saw my lawyer. I planned the basic plan of my next steps. With every conversation, I knew I was getting stronger, but equally, that I was also damaged and vulnerable after such a struggle. One night, I was on my couch when Lauren called. She sounded on the edge, and I could tell that she was much more vulnerable than what she enjoyed making people thought she was. "Emily, can we talk?" "I believe we need to clear the air." I hesitated, my heart racing. Maybe I wanted to ignore her, to be on my guard. But another part wanted reconciliation. She was still my sister, after all. "Okay," I replied cautiously. "How about we meet at the coffee shop tomorrow?" Lauren was already sitting at a table in the corner when I arrived, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. She appeared weary and careworn by our recent skirmish. "Thank you for coming," she said in a barely audible voice. "I keep thinking about everything that's happened." I sat down across from her and said my words slowly. "I think we both have to do a lot of thinking, Lauren. It's not just about the money. It is about trust and family and what we're willing to do to each other." "I know," she said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry for how I acted. I allowed a fear of losing everything to distract me. I didn't think about how it would impact you. I only saw the money and it felt like a lifeline." I moved in closer, my face softening. "You gotta realize I'm not against you. I just want what Dad left me, and that's all. I had hoped we could come together to do something in his memory, but you and Jake went another way." Lauren sighed and ran her hand through her hair. "We thought you were stupid and you weren't going to fight. I never wanted it to be this way. I wish things were like it was, Em. I miss our family." There was something in her voice that reached me, and I felt a glimmer of hope. "I miss that too," I confessed. Pretending everything is normal when it's not is a dangerous place to go back to. Or maybe there's just a lot that we are refusing to acknowledge here, and I can't help but feel like we need to be honest with each other. "I need to make this right," she said, her voice shaky. "I'll talk to Jake. Maybe we could come up with a plan that everyone can live with. An approach that celebrates Dad without rending us all to pieces." I looked at her face, seeking her candor. "If you're serious about this, then I'll listen. But I am not going to invest over $200,000 in this company for the two of you, not to mention the other two grandmasters I am picking up, if I don't have some assurance that you both are going to work with each other and not against me." She hesitated for a long time and then nodded. "I promise, we're going to solve this together." The next few days were filled with anticipation as I waited to hear from Jake. Lauren promised me she would not make it sensitive, but I knew her brother enough to predict his reaction. I was prepared to fight, but somewhere I hoped, just maybe, we would find a way to rebuild what had been lost. And then Lauren called me. "Jake wants to meet. Can we all sit at the same table?" My heart raced. "When?" "Same coffee shop tomorrow. Can you do it?" I inhaled deeply, bracing for whatever. "Yes, I'll be there." The following day, I got there a little bit too early, and my mind was racing. I had been the one to suggest this date and am not a maternal person, and now I began to squirm in my chair, eager but a little frightened. They entered, Jake and Lauren, each of their faces displaying tension. Thanks for showing up, I said, smiling through the effort. I believe we need to have an open conversation because what next? Jake folded his arms across his chest, his face defensive. If this is another lecture about how you are in charge, Emily. Not the point, I returned flatly. This is about finding a solution that all of us can agree upon. If you are, I'm ready to listen to you. Lauren nodded and pleaded with her eyes. We've both had time to think about how we responded. We were too selfish to think of that, and I think it's time we put family first. Jake sat uncomfortably, the air still thick with tension. What do you propose? We can establish a combined investment strategy, not a plan without guidelines. We both get an equal say, and we'll consult with a financial advisor to make sure our decisions are sound. We'll work as a team, but I have to have your word that you two won't attempt to undercut me again. Jake was quiet for some time when at last he said, Fine. I can agree to that, but I also want to make sure we saved a little money for ourselves too. What the hell are we doing? We need to start thinking about our futures. Sure, I answered, grateful to see that there was a flicker of comprehension in his eyes. We can have some for personal use, but we need to track it. Transparency is key. As we went over the specifics, I could sense the walls slowly beginning to crumble down. It was a small win, but it felt huge. We were breaking them down together instead of working against one another. We met a few times in the next couple of weeks to firm up our plans. The more we worked together, the more I realized I missed not having them in my life. We laughed and shared so many memories, and for the first time after my father's death, I felt a little bit of hope that we might be able to bridge the divide that existed between us. Sign up for Love Letter and always get the latest in modern love, weddings, and relationships in the news by email. Eventually, we established the joint investment account, and I was careful to document and agree on every choice. I was overcome with a sense of relief and release as we progressed along in order to create something good and lasting for all of us. And in so doing, to build a past for our family after it had splintered. Eventually, I understood that revenge was not only about regaining my own, it was about reaching a way to regain myself. In the trials we went through, I found strength in myself. But more than that, I discovered that family could survive even the worst betrayals if we were brave enough to face our mistakes and fight for one another. One evening, as we were sitting together thanking, I could feel a wave of thanks coming over me. We were still a broken family, but we were slowly fixing the cracks, one conversation at a time. And at that moment, I realized that sometimes what is truly victorious is not the worst we can inflict, not the money we pursue, but the bridges we decide to repair. If you like this story of betrayal, revenge, and redemption, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more thrilling stories like this one. Hit the like button, share the video with your friends, and leave a comment. What's the biggest betrayal you've ever experienced? Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.